Speaking of chicks, should we bring Robert Schimmel in here?
Yeah.
Will help us finish the news?
That'd be great.
Bob Schimmel, are you in the next room, or
I
can
see
we
him. He's on his
bring
way.
Bob Schimmel in? Doing our live streaming podcast.
Now, have
Donnie?
you had him in since you've been doing the podcast?
Yeah. Bob has been in a time or two. Hey, Bob.
Here, have a seat.
Bob, sit in the middle.
Sorry,
And,
I was doing a little crying.
A little crying.
Yeah, but
put on
only jizz tears.
put your headphones on.
Okay.
And tell us what's happening.
What's happening?
Yeah. Well, last time we talked to you, you were getting divorced.
Okay, now I can't hear you.
All right. Well, put them to them like this. Last time we talked, you were getting divorced. You were getting in trouble with the law. You were getting in trouble with the ex. There's all kinds of domestic issues going on. What's going on now?
Not any better.
Really?
So time heals some wounds.
What happened? What's your status?
What's my status? Well, no charges were filed, and that whole thing was just
Dropped.
yeah. Well, dropped. It wasn't. There was nothing even filed. There was no. It was a premature phone call. But and when
To 911.
yeah,
Right.
but not by her. She called someone and told them to call, which is kind of weird, considering that if you thought your life was in danger, that you would have the presence of mind to call someone else and tell them to call the police.
Right.
So the police come. I didn't even know they were coming because she didn't say I had my friend call. And when they're taking me out, they said, you could thank O.J. Simpson for this. And I'm like, he called the cops on me?
No, but
He's looking for the guy who killed his wife.
It's true. We can thank Richard Reed for taking off our shoes at the airport, and we can thank OJ for the cops having to pull somebody out of the house.
Usually the man.
Always the man, or 90% of the time the man. I mean, it used to be they could show up to the house, sort of look around and see that there was no broken furniture or china that had been tossed around the living room. No one had any marks on them. And then leave. Now they can't leave because they would be on the hook if something happened, right?
And they won't trust you to go to a hotel for the night. So
Right.
they put you in their own.
So did you spend the night in jail?
I was there about 5-6 hours. The same place that Mel Gibson was in, and Nick Nolte. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they don't ask you to sign the wall or anything like that.
Now, are you in a cell by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't even get laid in there.
Oh, man.
And
I mean, that would have taken the edge off of being
definitely.
behind bars.
What a
I'm
joke.
claustrophobic.
and then you leave and you come down and there's
I come down and
the paparazzi.
They're right outside the door.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's, hey, Schimmel.
Were you surprised that they were there, or did you sort of
Yes,
know?
I didn't think I was that well known, and all my friends said you're not. You weren't on. You weren't on the television version of it. It was only the internet, and you're not in National Enquirer or any of those other ones.
Right.
But she changed the locks and filed for divorce within 24 hours, which is kind of fast.
What was the nature of this fight?
The nature of the fight was she was her boyfriend didn't want me hanging around the house anymore, and
So your boyfriend didn't want her husband hanging around the house anymore?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
who happened to be the next door neighbor. And
Wow.
and I was hearing about it.
Now, was this boyfriend closer to her age? So I remember there was a
Yes.
gap, right?
Yes,
Okay. Because she was a friend of your daughter.
right.
Got it.
They're not friends anymore.
Wow.
And my daughter may be a grandfather. So
Grandfather?
I actually am a legitimate
Oh,
grandfather.
made you a grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Congratulations.
December 15th.
Congrats.
Little girl, her name's Isla. So actually, I really am a grandfather and not confused for being my two sons' grandfather.
That must be nice.
What? When they say, "Don't you look like the proud grandpa." Yeah, they're my kids.
How do you work out the now custody
Who do you see them?
and the?
We're still working on that now. We tried to mediate because it's a lot cheaper that way.
Yeah.
Because this is my second time at this, and the first one, my ex's lawyer and mine were like in a pissing contest using my money as piss,
Right.
and I ran out. So this time I thought maybe we could settle it amicably, but there is no amicable thing.
Can I ask this? Because
can ask anything.
I feel like almost every couple has this point where sometimes it's spoken and sometimes it's unspoken and sometimes it's spoken through another couple. Like some couple that you're acquainted with or maybe friends with is getting a divorce, and you're hearing how ugly it gets, and you hear about how much they're pissing away in attorney's fees, and you make that comment to your significant other at some point, but you're really talking about yourselves. You do that, yeah, boy, Steve and Sheila, it's a shame that those two couldn't just sit down and kind of work this out.
Right.
Meanwhile, the kids' college fund is going right up the nose of the fucking attorneys that are representing. Yeah. And too bad it had to get to this, you know? I would hope that it would never get to this, you know? And they were so clear, they weren't arch enemies.
Right, and they shared a life and they had kids, and you'd hope that they could do it amicably.
For the kids, if not for anyone, but for the money that they were both pissing away that was essentially their money and their kids' money. And there's that moment when your wife gives you that, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
And, I'd like to, I feel the same way. Why give it to the lawyers? But it always gets to the point where the lawyers get it. And I think the lawyers are aware of this. And there's this, I don't know. I mean, I know lawyers are about taking, whether it's a car accident or a divorce, I know they're about taking two parties and wedging themselves in between the two parties and then getting money from either one or both of the parties. That's what they do for a living. Does every single one of these fucking things have to distill down to this? I mean...
No, actually, I'm very lucky. My lawyer now is a female, and her advice is take the high road all the time, try and mediate. You don't want to go to court and fight, because there will be nothing left to have at the end. Nobody really wins at the end except the lawyers. I mean, she's the one telling me that.
Can your ex-wife is, and I know it's an emotional thing, and if somebody gets, usually what happens is the wife catches the guy cheating, and now it's the punitive part where, yeah, she could sit down and be decent, but if you weren't fucking the nanny, we wouldn't be here in the first place. And now I'm gonna squeeze. I won't squeeze your balls. I'll squeeze your bank account. I'll get you to pay me back that way. But this is not that situation.
No, this is the other way around, but I'm still getting squeezed.
Hey,
did you know this relationship was going on, or was it?
I kind of had an idea, and I had neighbors telling me for months about, this guy's coming over to visit constantly when you're on the road, and my own manager, who was at the house a few times when he came over, said, this guy's not coming over to see you. And, I guess I was in denial. I didn't want to believe it, and, and I wanted to stay together, and then, she did a pretty sneaky thing. She put his phone number in her iPhone under a girlfriend's name. Uh-huh. So whenever the guy would call,
it would say
looked like
Heather.
the girlfriend was calling.
Right.
When he would text her, it looked like the girlfriend was texting.
Right.
Then one night we're having dinner, and the girlfriend calls, and which was weird because she was having dinner with us and didn't have her phone out.
Oh, no.
And I'm seeing the name blink.
Goddamn movie.
Seeing the name blink on the phone, and I'm like, oh boy. So I go and I look at the AT&T bill, and here's 55, 60 calls and texts a day for like 7 months with this guy. So I go to her and I said, are you texting the next door neighbor? Is he calling you or anything? And she said, the next door neighbor? About what? And I showed her the phone bill, and she went apeshit. And she said, you know what? You went behind my back and look at the fucking phone bill? I can't live under these conditions. And I'm like, wow. You know what? I kind of thought I was the victim for a second. I'm the bad guy because I found out. This was the fight
that you had the night the cops
Yeah,
called.
so she started yelling, and, I was yelling, and I said, I don't want you to see him anymore. Then you tell him not to come over, and, stuff like that. And the guy was really... I was a real sissy. I wasn't handling it the way... I mean, not that violence or anything solves anything, but my friends were saying, go over there and beat the shit out of the guy. I said, when she starts dating someone a little smaller, this guy's like 6'2", and but I actually woke up one night because his wife called. He's married, and my wife's friends with his wife. So she calls, is he there? And I said, I don't know. You woke me up. And I go downstairs. They're down on the couch talking. It's like 2, 3 in the morning, having a drink. And I go down there, and I tell the guy, you know what, your wife's coming over here in like 2 seconds. She's looking for you.
Right.
And he goes, oh, shit, don't let her in. Yeah, great. That's what I need to do.
Right.
All of a sudden, bam, bam, bam. I open the door. She comes in. And my wife runs upstairs.
A rolling pin, a frying pan. Here you go, sweetie.
Here, hit me first, because I let them do this. So, no. And then he, falls back and pretends he's sleeping. And then she's shaking him, going, "Hey, honey, honey." And he's like, "Huh? Where am I?"
Well, maybe he went into that thing that a lot of reptiles go into when they're just traumatized, where they just literally just freeze. Yeah.
And she said, "You're at the Schimmels." And he said, "Oh, my God." And then, so he stands up and he goes on, and he turns to me and says, "I'm sorry. I didn't even know that I conked out." And when he gets to the door, he turns and looks at me and goes, like, "Hey, we fooled her."
Right.
So she wouldn't stop that. And then, so that's what happened. We started yelling. And then...
that moment when you were at dinner and you're sitting next to, let's just call her Heather.
Yeah.
And the phone rings, your wife's phone rings, and it says Heather's calling, and you're looking at Heather with one hand on a fork and the other on a knife. That had to be a weird. I mean, that's right out of a movie, by the way.
It is.
It's why women, by the way, aren't good at this kind of stuff, because she should have picked a friend that was further out of the circle or something, but especially when you're going out to dinner and there's a good chance that the text or the phone could be ringing. But there was that moment, and if it was a movie, it would have pulled in, it would have done a weird snap focus thing where it pulled in tight on you and everything else went blurry, and maybe the room spun around a little bit. They went on the dolly and went around it. But was there that moment where you're like, my God, this is happening?
Oh, yeah. I felt my heart beating in my throat. And, I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. And but I didn't want it. I didn't want the marriage to end. I mean, I wasn't going to say, all my friends are like, why don't you just say, get out right now? And I couldn't do it.
I was just thinking of those Olive Garden commercials where everyone's having a party with the one black friend. And I thought this would be the exact opposite of that. When people are like, you're going with the panini. What the heck? Yeah.
Oh, linguine.
No. You'll have everything on the menu.
And one of my friends said, you want to make sure that they're really having sex, and got me this stuff called Checkmate that's like a sperm detector.
And
have you heard of this stuff?
No. You check
if you
your
look it up online, it's the same thing they use in rape kits. You get, when your wife comes home from the supermarket, you get her underwear and without her knowing, put a few drops of this chemical on there. Yeah. And then you blot it with this blotting thing.
Checkmate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you put 2 drops, and then if you put 2 drops of this other stuff on, and if it turns blue, it's positive for semen. See, my problem is that, when your wife walks into the bathroom and you have her panties and eyedroppers and shit like that, it's really hard to say, it's not what you think. It's
right.
And then they get pissed off that you don't, I love...
Did you use that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
You did. And what did it turn blue?
Yeah.
It did?
Yeah. And I was afraid because she came in and caught me, basically, and I was afraid it was going to splash all over her, and her mouth and tits would turn blue, too. And then, that wasn't going to make me feel any better.
So there's actually a moment where you have your wife's underwear, the mother of your
DNA
children.
tested on the kids to make sure they were even mine.
Wow.
That's how bad it got.
Wow.
They are
Frat mate, or how does that work? You get just a little urine sample?
Well, I'll tell you how it works. Don't put it on your charge card where your wife can see the statement, because she found out about it.
And did you have to say, I'm taking the kids
and that was bad.
We're going to Knott's Berry Farm.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you see,
no. I said, hey, kids, time to brush our teeth, but first, let's get these Q-tips and swab in their mouth, and then send them in, and then they give you like a number, and you don't use a real name, and it comes back and tells you what the percentage is that it's yours.
But it came back on the credit card statement.
Yeah.
But so this is
Identigene, which is hard to say. Yeah, they make dungarees. It doesn't work. It's she knew it.
Now, how much does something like that cost?
That was like $49.
So we
cheap
always
compared
talk
to the lawyer.
We always talk about on this show. How in this modern time we're living in. First off, I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's healthy to have the Checkmate or the Identigene. I know it's useful. I don't know if it's healthy. I guess it's the same argument that like Mormons make with cloning. Like, I know we can do it, but really there's some dark side to this somewhere. Yeah. And everything you've spoken about, and I've said with the texting, with the phones, with the records, with the computers, with the emails, with the kits, with the statements, everything you've spoken about is a problem that's about 10 years old. first the cell phone,
right,
and the whatever. Then that goes. Then now she catches you with the checkmate. Then you go into the gene, but the cell phone goes into the record, and you check the phone records. Now she then checks the statement for the MasterCard and sees the gene thing, and it's all one big computer paper thing that madmen never have to deal with.
Really, it's big trust fest.
Right.
There's the thing right there. Look. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Don Draper couldn't have gotten away with any of this.
Paternity test.
Right. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
we have a. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, I'm just sorry.
Listen. I got so many emails after I did the show last time about. I mean, I couldn't believe it more than when the event happened.
Really.
About people saying we heard you on there and you're a bigger man than me. You know, to be that nice about it, and people have. Yelled out stuff when I've been on stage and said, calling her names that I won't even repeat on the air, and but start with a C. And
checkmate.
Do I, people come over, do you hate her? And I said, no. And they go, you don't? And I said, well, you know what? It's really hard. I have 2 kids that I love. They're from her. They're half me, half her. And the first 7 years, I mean, we were married 6, but like the first 7 years were pretty good. It's the last 7, 8 months that were shitty. Right. That doesn't erase the beginning.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Could I go back to that? No.
So what's the arrangement now?
The arrangement right now, I'm living out of the house. I live in an apartment, and I have joint custody, legal and physical, and I have them. It's arranged in a really bizarre way. I have them for every 48 hours when I'm not on the road. So I get them at 7 o'clock at night. We have to meet at a McDonald's or at an Albertsons where there's security cameras. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding?
It's like a drop zone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I ask you a question?
She has a racing form under her arm.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the kids is in the
identical
racing
briefcases.
form.
Right.
They leave
Albertsons.
down. Jesus Christ.
Now
I said to my lawyer, can't we meet at like Bristol Farms and Whole
that's
Foods?
classier.
And she said, why? You want to pay more money when you go to court? Bristol Farms? Are you crazy?
Right.
So
that is expensive.
she said Costco. That way, so in case she like flips and says 911, if I'm at McDonald's, people would go, we're here and nothing happened.
Yeah, you'd rather it be caught on tape.
Sure.
Yeah. I actually, in the beginning, she was pretty tough on it. She only let me have supervised visitation with the kids, which were totally uncalled for. And I took my kids to the movies to see that Up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had to have a guy with us. And my son, my 5-year-old, says, Dad, I got to go pee. And the guy will not let me go in the bathroom alone with my own son.
Wow.
But
he has to come in there and watch my kid pee.
A guy can't go into a public bathroom and jack his... have his son go to the bathroom? What time are we living in? No, okay, couple of questions. First off, that supervised visitation thing has to be the worst gig.
Have you ever met someone else who had done that?
Yes,
yeah.
You have?
I have.
Oh.
And celebrities and things like that.
But the guy who has
that is a gig.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's gigs, hey, the guy's an ice cream tester. You know what I mean? And you go, fuck, that's awesome. Or he's a strip club DJ. Fucking awesome gig. And then you hear about, the guy cleans sewers out or whatever. And you go, it's bad. But this emotionally has to be one of the worst gigs, probably second only to the FBI forensic guy who has to go to, we were talking about this, but it must happen all the time. The young grad student is found dead, killed by God knows who and raped. Her fiance, who is going to marry her in 3 weeks, has to be contacted at a certain point, and they go, look, Brad, we know you had nothing to do with this, but we're going to need you to beat off into this cocktail napkin because just to make sure.
Right.
Just to show them.
The fiance's always got to be ruled out.
Now, I'm not telling you to think about her. If you'd like
this
a hustler, I could go back to the van. I'll be just outside the door. Please take your time. I know you're in a mourning period, but could you please beat off?
If you could pull yourself out of your grief for a few minutes.
If it helps, if you want to use your tears for lube, that's fine. I feel like this is the way she would have wanted it. Obviously, she'd want this man brought to justice. She was covered in jizz and blood,
right.
Of course.
And in a way, when you think of her, that brings her back.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that's not your jizz she was covered in. Okay, so if you could just... That's got to be the worst gig on the
That
planet.
has to be bad. But this guy,
this second,
saying I got to pee, the kid, and then this guy's going, you stand right over here. You can stand right there, and it's like, wow, okay, you get to stand closer to my kid's dick than I do, and I don't even. The only thing that would have been worse was him to say, "Hey, I'm a big fan of yours, but this is a job, and I got to do this. So get the fuck away from your kid." But it's hard.
Here's what I'm saying. Why can they do this? I mean, you've had no history of violence.
No, none. Because
whatever.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, anybody could. You could call the police right now and and file a restraining order on me.
Let's do it on Teresa.
Yeah.
No, you can.
No, I know.
And I think it's like for 8 days, like a temporary thing.
Right.
And 8 days later, you have to prove, that there's good reason to keep that restraining order in effect. But you could get one on anybody. I mean, I could call right now and say, I don't want her within 500 feet of where I am. And they'll go, okay, come downtown to Hill Street and fill out the paper.
And because of all...
TMZ's down there, too.
Right. But the supervised visitation thing, when there's zero history of this... I mean, do you think a judge could suss this out?
Yeah, is this a cover
whatever?
your ass thing? Again, like we were talking about with the cops, they can't just go, this is a domestic situation and leave in case there's...
what happens is if the wife asks for supervision and they say, nah, I don't think it's necessary, and then something happens, everyone's on the hook at that point, right? So it's another one of those lawyers ruining this country situations. Hey, you want to try taking a phone call or Twitter?
Yeah, actually, I'm curious on your take on this Twitter question.
Yes. Somebody wants to know what you think about Jay Leno / Conan situation. I'm doing Leno tonight, actually. So I have thoughts.
You and Jim Norton.
Yes.
And somebody else, so I forget.
Yeah, John McCain's daughter.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to get custody of those tits, by the way. Speaking of custody.
She is stacked, isn't she?
Nice rack on her, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I'd like to
She
get
looks like
visitation
somebody...
rights with them boobies.
Exactly.
Supervised.
I don't care who watches.
Unsupervised.
You can look at the tits, but I have to be with
More
you when
guys
you're looking.
to high five.
What do I think? Wow, it's tough. You know what? I know both those guys. I've done both their shows. Me personally, I liked it the way it was, the old way.
Mm-hmm. The way
Leno at the
Jay at
Tonight Show.
11:30 and Conan at 12:30, right?
I think that what I've seen comedians get away with on Conan at that hour, the later hour, you cannot do earlier. Mm-hmm. So standards and practices definitely come into effect at an earlier hour.
Yeah, if you're doing stand-up, especially, and it's after midnight, you're in this sort of safe harbor, they call it.
Comedy Central showed my special completely uncensored after midnight.
Right.
Like HBO does, or Showtime.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Conan, I got to do a lot. I mean, they would say, how come you're not doing like this joke or this joke? And you're going on TV, it's after midnight. You can say dick once.
Right.
And you go, you can, but not earlier you can't.
Right.
You just can't. So for me as a comic, later is always better.
Right. And I'll say this about the situation because I have a little inside knowledge. People think, and Bob, I think you'll back me up on this. People think that people know what's going on, and they don't. See, they think that Jay Leno knows what's going on. They think that Conan knows what's going on. They think their agents know what's going on. They think the suits who run NBC know what's going on. I'll guarantee they don't. I'll guarantee Jay doesn't know what's going on and Conan doesn't go on. Now, there's a lot of they're playing it close to the vest, and you see Jay leaving the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa, and the TMZ's putting the mic. What's going on, Jay? What's going on? I'll bet you Jay doesn't know what's going on, and I'll bet you the reason he doesn't know what's going on is because his boss doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
People in TV don't always have a plan, and oftentimes when the celebrities say, hey, I didn't find out I was fired until I turned on the evening news,
right.
They're right.
Yeah.
It's not so much hyperbole.
No, you're right. There was one time I did Conan, and I was in the green room, and he came in and said, what are you going to open with? And I was fucking with him, and I said, I had nitrous oxide at the dentist, and I was feeling really, queasy, and he says, okay, Bob, you're going to feel a little prick in your mouth. And I said, I'm going to need a lot more gas before that starts happening.
Right.
So he laughs and goes, do it. So I open with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't clear that with standards and practices or anybody else at the show.
Right.
So when I come off, they're on me right away, and they're going, "Why would you say prick in the mouth? You didn't tell us you were doing that." And I said, "Conan said to do it."
Right.
And they said, "Don't listen to him."
Right.
And I said, "But it's his show." They said,
Right.
"No, it's not.
Right.
He's the host.
Right. He's the host of the show
The
that comes on
sponsors
at
own the
12:30.
show.
Right, yeah.
That's
The
right.
sponsors pay the network's payroll."
You could
Sure.
say one dick, but no prick.
Just like we're all Barack Obama's boss.
That's right.
Right
Oh,
now.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
And
He
I
works
remember it
for
happened to
us.
Dana
works for
Carvey.
us.
Remember when Dana was on and he had that sketch show and he did the President Bush Sr. feeding the babies with the dog nipples or
Right.
whatever he had on them.
Yep.
And the next day, Taco Bell and Pepsi pulled out.
Well, Taco
And
Bell
that
didn't
was
have
the
that
end
dog
of
at the time.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was the end of the show right there.
Wow.
As soon as the sponsors dump
But
out.
creatively, did you think the Leno show was a lot worse in the 10 o'clock incarnation? Was it the same? I don't know. I have a baby. I'm asleep at 8.
I think it's pretty close to the same thing. It's just that the demographics not
You
the
mean
same.
the
at that
11:30
hour.
show?
Yeah, was the
Conan's 11:30 show? You mean, yeah, was it different?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Conan's.
Sorry, I was
Yes.
asking, was Leno's show different when it moved to 10?
Yes.
The show that Adam's
well,
been
but
doing.
not as much. It didn't change as much, I think, as Conan's did.
I
think it's
you know,
I think it's a
I
big
did
fuck
the
you to
show
Conan.
a bunch of times at 11:30, and then right after that, a bunch of times at 10 o'clock. And I just felt like it was more of the same. You know, it's a weird thing where they were going like, "Oh, Jay dropped the ball,"
Yeah.
or "the show's nothing like," or anything. It was really like saying instead of a pizza that served 8, it was a pizza that served 20. And then
Right.
someone started saying, "Oh, it's a totally different pizza." No, it was just a little bigger, and a little more flour, and a little more cheese. It spread out. Now, maybe people didn't want to see that at 10 o'clock. They wanted to see it at 11:30. But to say it was a different show,
Right.
he got up there, he did a monologue. He did all his, wacky news
Headlines.
stories and the
Right.
headlines and all the, fucked up
Jaywalking, yeah.
jaywalking. He did all the stuff. And then he sprinkled in a few things like me doing, Jerk of the Month at the end of the thing or doing some sort of comedy roundtable or whatever. He added some flour to this gravy to try to spread it out or thicken it a little bit. But it was the same sensibility, the same
Right.
writing staff, the same everything. It just didn't work at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, well, I think that what it is that you and I and we're old school guys when it comes to that kind of thing, and I think that when you have somebody like Johnny Carson, it was a ritual to watch the Tonight Show. People that he really was in your living room or in your bedroom with you, and people either fell asleep watching it or went to bed after Johnny said goodnight. And
Right.
if he moved to an earlier thing like that, that means everybody's schedule has to adjust for the Tonight Show.
Right.
And that's a big thing to overcome, I think. And
Right.
when that's a part of your life every night, like Saturday Night Live used to be when it was really good, every week, I knew people on Saturday, you go, "Hey, you want to go out and do this?" "Yeah, but we got to be back by so-and-so
Right.
because Saturday Night Live."
Pre-TiVo.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that Jay, what different were they going to expect from him? He's great at what he does, but that's what you're going to get from Jay.
Now, I think the experiment was, will people watch that format at that period of time? To break it up from a content standpoint is ridiculous.
Right.
It's the same guy doing essentially, first off, how could he do anything different than what he's been doing for the last 19
That's what was
years
confusing
anyway?
me, because he was being lambasted.
He did. The monologue was the same. The sketches, the everything,
Headlines,
the jaywalking, the headlines. It was just the same show. It just didn't work in that hour. Now, look, it wouldn't work at 9 a.m.
Right.
on a Saturday morning because kids want to see cartoons. I mean, it just didn't work at that hour. To blame Jay is really unfair because it's really just doing
Yeah, like what Bob
he
said,
did
people were in a
anyway.
habit of watching at a certain
Right.
time.
That's why, to me, that was almost like a similar test with Howard. I mean, when he was going to go to Sirius, and then you had to buy a subscription and buy the radio, that was a real test. To be a fan for free is one thing. To say you want to listen to me from now on, you got to go buy a special radio, you got to buy a subscription.
Yeah.
How many people were really going to follow? And I think a lot of people bet he wasn't going to last this long.
Right.
They just didn't see people going out and buying Sirius radio.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that changed from what it was supposed to be. That was supposed to be no commercials, all music or all comedy. And how long did that last? They were doing ads for
Somewhere
XM.
about the time they cut him the first $50 million check. They decided to talk to the good people.
What's
from
the future
Coca-Cola.
there? Do you know when his contract runs out?
It can't be too much longer.
It's got about a year.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Jimmy about it. And again, this notion that in show business, people know, their bosses know, they
Right.
don't. I guarantee you, I could go on vacation with Howard Stern and we could talk openly about whatever, and he'd give you about the same answers I would have given you a couple of years ago when it had to do with my radio career and Danny Bonaducci and my life filling in for Howard Stern. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get fired for this. I don't know if I'm going to get a raise because of it. I'm probably not going to get a raise. But you know what I'm saying? I'll bet you Stern doesn't know. He has options, he has feelings,
Right.
but he doesn't know any more what he's going to do at the end of this, any more than Brett Favre knows what he's going to do at the end of any given season.
Yeah.
There are parts of him that says he should retire. There are other parts that says maybe he'll go to a new club. Who's to say he doesn't have another good year? He's got a playoff game coming up in 5 days. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Howard's got a lot to top. For him, for that to end and to not get out then and say, you know what, I'm going to try this now. That, to me, it reminds me of boxers that always come back for that one last fight and they go
Right.
out bad.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
what
and,
happened
you know,
to Ali and many others.
Evander Holyfield.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we try taking a phone call?
Yeah.
Sure. By the way,
do
I'm
that.
on my way to Las Vegas.
Oh yeah.
I am, hopefully. Dice has a deal with the Riviera.
Dice does. Yeah.
Yeah, not me.
Right.
He does. But he doesn't want to work every week, and he just offered me to take the off weeks when. So I'm trying it out for the first time this week.
that's great.
Starting tomorrow through Sunday at the.
So
at the Riviera.
the schedule will be
He does like 30 weeks a year. So if
it works out.
I could do it like 20 weeks.
I heard Frank Caliendo got like some $50 million deal over there. I mean, they still making
That's-
those kind of big deals.
Well, I don't know.
Can you do John Madden?
No,
Well,
Not
then
at all.
I
forget
don't know
it.
if John
Can you
Madden
do
can do John Madden.
Charles Barkley.
That's the theater that I used to work, the Lance Burton Theater, and every time Lance would go dark, that's where I would be. And then,
That was
then there was
Dice.
a little article in TMZ, and then Frank got the theater.
What kind of deal does like Dice have at a place like that? Is it like $10 million a
have
year?
no
Is it-
idea.
I mean, it's pretty lucrative, right?
Yeah. Vegas is unreal. It used to be, it was the place, the Rat Pack, all this
Right.
stuff. Then for a while it became the elephant's burial ground.
Yeah.
Right.
Where that was last stop before you were out of show business. Then they tried to make it a family place, which
Right.
didn't work.
Right.
And now it's like the place to perform.
Yeah,
and
it's huge.
and if you look, really, if you look down the strip at the Marquise, I could see 9 shows that I would miss my show for to see. The competition.
Well, I know you
is
love Bette
tremendous
Midler.
there.
That's
Yeah.
a big one for you.
I saw
And I
Bette
know
Midler
she's-
in New York a long time ago.
No,
when she was-
Bob's a massive Elaine Boozler fan.
Oh man, a lot. Yeah, he's been influenced by the early Boozler.
Early Boozler was her best.
I worked with her once. I opened for her once and was a little too dirty.
Should we take
Sure.
ourselves a phone call? Hey, Bert?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, Bert.
Who's filling those things out, Donnie?
Bert is calling from Connecticut.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. Well, first off, Teresa, congrats on the baby and the fabulous blog.
Oh, thanks.
Bryan, congratulations on your improving health.
Thanks, pal.
Adam, a question for you. I've been a big fan mostly over the last couple of years, and I've been watching the Adam Carolla Project online. Great show.
Thanks.
The thing that struck me, especially after getting to know you primarily through the podcast, take this in the spirit in which it's intended, but I was surprised at how nice you were to your dad. And I was just wondering if you could talk about that, comparing, the things that you say about, your family and your crazy background, and specifically your dad, compared to, hanging out with your dad and buying the house from him, and him coming over and hanging out with the crew. It seemed a little disjointed to me.
On the Adam Carolla Project.
Yes.
Yeah, versus what I say on this show or the radio show or Loveline or any radio show.
Correct.
The relationship I have with my dad is I get along well with my dad, and my dad is a really nice guy. And he's a loving guy, and he's a warm guy, and he doesn't have an evil bone in his body. And when I'm with him in person, it's always cordial, and it's always easy, and it's always good.
You guys used to jam in the radio days.
Scat?
Yeah, but it doesn't change the past. And so when people ask me about the past, or the past comes up, I say he was kind of a hands-off, kind of a shitty dad. Now, he wasn't a bad dad. He didn't abuse me. We didn't need joint custody or supervision or any of that.
Supervised piss sessions.
Supervised piss sessions. He was just no fun as a dad. I wanted to throw the football. I wanted to work on a mini bike. I wanted to do shit like that. My dad sat around and read a book and didn't do anything, and he didn't go to any football games, and we never went to any events together, and we never did any. We didn't do the father and son shit. Yeah. He was not a bad person. He was just out of it, lazy, maybe a little bit depressed, and I don't think he knew any better. His dad died when he was young, and I don't think he ever had that experience of playing catch with his son or with his dad, and thus it never translated into anything with me. So it's weird because and obviously I don't want to confront the old man and get into a bunch of shit and tears and everything. But it's essentially, when I see him as an adult. And I see me as an adult and him as an adult. And he's a smart guy and he's a nice guy. And I like going out to lunch with him and so on and so forth. But if you want to ask me how it was in junior high with him as a dad, I would give him about 2.5 or 3. That's so... It's I guess I just whacked the sign. It's I know it sounds like a little bit of a contradiction, Bert, but it's trying. I do like him. I still recognize that him and my mom, who are both great people now, were fairly shitty parents growing up.
And the way that you say it now, Adam, it doesn't sound like a contradiction at all. It makes perfect sense that they are good people. They just perhaps weren't the best parents.
There are a lot of people that aren't bad people that make pretty shitty parents, and I know a lot of people that aren't very good people that make pretty good parents. Yeah. I mean, they're all over their kids, and they're taking them everywhere, and they're all up in their shit, and they're all involved with their life, but you wouldn't want to fucking go out and have a beer with this guy.
Sure. It's a different skill set. I mean, the set of skills that make somebody a nice lunch companion like your dad is different than the set of skills that make somebody a great parent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I had the same thing with my dad, too. My parents are both Holocaust survivors, and my dad was never into sports. I never took me or my brother Jeffrey to any football games or baseball games. To him, it was like that was wasting time when he could, for him, he lost everything, came here, and wanted to rebuild his life, and that was time that he could be doing other things. So, then when I'm a teenager and people go, who's your favorite team? And I go, what's a team? And they're like, what?
Right.
Because he never exposed me to any of it. And then when I talked to my dad recently and said, do you know that we've never went to like a football game or a baseball game? And he said, well, what would we do there?
Oh, no.
He said, sit and watch guys run around and make millions of dollars, and I'm just watching the clock go by. And I said, well, but it's you and me together. He said, why can't we be together and talk about something somewhere else? Why do we have to be... He said, I would rather do something with you outside than go sit at a movie with you where we can't even talk to each other.
Well, I'll tell you what's bullshit about that, as I've said many times. Thanks, Bert, for your question. I'll put you on hold. The reality is, as I've said many times, the common interest, the shared interest, that's what brings you together as when you're a kid and as an adult. Bryan's dad loves USC, probably just because Bryan went to USC, or maybe even made a solid BM at USC one time, and he shellacked that and put it on his fucking desk. But it makes me insane. It's like he comes out from up north, he lives up in the Bay Area, comes out and tailgates with Bryan at USC games and stuff. And there's this thing, and all the parents should know about this. Whereas my dad wasn't into football. I was nuts about football. He wasn't into sports. I was nuts. He wasn't into building. I was into building. He wasn't into cars. I was into cars. I wasn't into jazz. He was into jazz. So when the dust settles, there's no excuse to go anywhere or do anything. And, I use Donnie as an example all the time. He sees his dad a lot, And a lot of his dad loves cars. Donnie loves cars. The stuff is sort of car-centric. We went out and shot a CarCast podcast last Saturday on the lot over at Radford, and guess who was there? His dad and his mom with their 34 Woody, and there was Donnie, and he talked to, I don't know what year it was, but they talked to the dad, they talked to mom. The point is it wasn't them going out and saying, let's go to lunch and have a heart-to-heart. It was yet another event that his dad was going to, that Donnie was going to, that brought them together. And when you erase, if you took away the team, or you took away the cars, or you took away the concerts, or the movies, or whatever, all that stuff's fine and well. My dad kind of does the same thing. Well, I'm not into this. Well, I'm not into that. But guess what? We don't see each other because you're not into any of that stuff, and I'm not into sitting around and listening to Stan Kenton records, and thus a year goes by, and you really, if you think about the reasons, you have your friends. Everyone has their family, the responsibility. What brings you together? The big fight. Oh, there's a big fight, and everyone's coming over to watch it. I got the pay-per-view. But if you ain't into boxing, then you don't see that guy. Yeah. And that's what the dads do. And they do the, we don't have to sit around to know we love each other and watch it. Yeah, but then a year goes by, and you don't see the guy.
I know. They don't have too many tailgating parties at the Simon Wiesel Center for Holocaust
Yeah,
Studies.
they're very intolerant of the other team.
Hey, Bogart and the Manischewitz, dude. Let me fill the bong.
My dad has the greatest sense of humor in the world, and the Holocaust to him, there's just nothing funny there. And I went to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. with my mom and dad. They're on videotape there. They are at the Wiesenthal Center, too. They were in Showa.
They archive it and they put them up.
My parents had an aftercard before I did. And
they were in Showa.
Yeah.
It's like a 7-hour movie.
So here's the thing. I'm a comic. I can't help thinking the way I think. We go through the whole Holocaust Museum. I don't know if you've been there. It's devastating to think that my parents went through any of that. Well, they actually have a train car you could stand in.
Jeez.
And they tell you how many people were actually in there. It's mind-boggling. Well, when you leave...
I'm sorry, I've only been to the one. I walked through that one because I was thinking about having the twins' 4th birthday party there.
Oh, really?
They rent it out for kids' parties?
Well, they do. Yeah.
Like a Bergen-Belsen theme? Or
it's a museum, but they're Jews.
Chuck E.
Cheese. Mondays are slow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Curators first.
So you see all this stuff, and it really, like tortures people and killings and all this stuff. And then it's like Vegas. You dump out into the gift shop. Like when you leave a showroom in Vegas and you're in the casino, you go into the gift shop and they have stuff that you could buy there. And I said to my dad, I don't know why, but I just said, the only thing missing is a T-shirt that says, I survived the Holocaust and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. And he turned to me and said, I can't believe you said something like that. And I said, Dad, come on, you got to break the ice. It's so intense in there. It's like, I can't take it anymore.
And then you had to buy him the Oscar Schindler playing cards to make up for it.
He doesn't, what, my parents never owned the German car. They don't have a Krupp's coffee maker. They are so against it. They really are. And my manager, Lee, had a BMW X5 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So my parents are visiting. They live in Scottsdale. And he picks my dad up and me, and we're going to go to lunch. And he goes, hey, I just got a new car. How do you like it? My dad goes, if you like it, that's all that matters. Me, I would never own a German car after what they did during the war. And he said, come on, those people aren't around anymore. He said, I'm still around, and I was in the fucking camp, so what are you talking about? Then I had a manager before him had a Jaguar, and it was always in the shop. Every time we went to a meeting, he had to rent a car.
Right.
And he was partners with Jimmy Miller. I'm not going to mention his name, but not that it's bad, but Eric Gold, that's his name. So anyway,
in this business.
Can you believe it?
What? Man,
so I said, why don't you get a BMW or a Mercedes or something? He said, I would never own a German car after what happened during the war. One day he picks me up to take me to a meeting, and he's driving an S500. That really...
Yeah.
I said,
it looks like Hitler's car.
I said, I thought you'd never own one of these after what happened. He said, have you ever driven one of these?
I know. So sad.
And they forget. That's it.
When you do, and I've been through a Holocaust museum in England, actually, when you walk through a Holocaust museum and then you hear me say, we should bomb Germany one more time, it doesn't sound that out of line.
My dad would do it in 2 seconds.
Really?
Do you
when
know?
he came to this country, they asked him, he was Hungarian, if we went to war with Hungary, this is in 1949 he came over, would you fight for the United States against Hungary? He said, put me in a plane with an atom bomb and I'll fly right into the parliament with the plane. Just
Wow.
me and the bomb.
Jeez.
So they said, okay, you're a
Loves
citizen,
this
pal.
goddamn country.
So,
Hold on,
did
I
you?
think we have questions.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
I was just going to briefly say that there is a psychological condition that only children of Holocaust survivors suffer from, because it's one of the most difficult childhoods you could have. How can you complain about anything? If he skins his knee, his parents were in concentration camps.
Right.
He can't ever complain
I've
about
always heard
anything.
that. You think
Right.
we had pot in the camp? Who'd want to be stoned there?
Right.
I mean, why would you want to be?
No, I just lost my uncle Gabi just a few weeks back, and him and Buji from Hungary were both in the ghetto, and their dad got taken off to a camp.
My
and,
parents didn't tell me stories until I was in my late 30s. They didn't want me to hear it as a kid.
Let's see, Frank. Question, Frank.
It's Mike.
Oh, okay, it's Mike.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, Mike.
Hi,
What's
Mike.
going on?
Brian, you look great.
Thanks, buddy.
Teresa, I've had a crush on you forever.
Oh, thanks.
And Bob, I used to love to hear you on the Stern Show and love to hear you on the podcast. Adam, I met you at Irvine after the first show at Irvine.
Well, we're coming back on the 20th if you want to come see us again.
Well, I'm real close to Brea, but unfortunately I can't make it.
Oh, well, we're going to Brea tomorrow, and we're going to Irvine on the 20th. So
I live like 2 miles from the Brea
we'll go
Improv.
to the fucking Brea show. We're doing 2 shows.
Yeah. My question was,
Huge
I wonder
fan.
when your sitcom is going to be on NBC.
Probably never, but we'll shoot a pilot in a couple of weeks, probably a
that's coming
couple of
up.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what I heard that you mentioned that they had picked it up, but I didn't know what all that meant. So
It doesn't really mean anything. It just means they're going to make the pilot. The news gets out that they picked up the pilot, and there's some confusion, but they don't pick up they picked up the making of the pilot, and they can put it down anytime they like. So it doesn't necessarily have to get on the air. I think it'll be a good show, and I think there are a lot of openings on NBC. We may be on from 10 till 12:30. Actually.
Yeah.
It's a 5-hour
Yeah.
program. 5 days a week. So I think we have a very good chance of getting on, and or we won't. But either way, they say your pilot got picked up. Well, no, we got picked up to shoot a pilot.
Right.
Right. It's sort of like she's going out with you. No, we got okayed to ask her out on a date.
Right.
She still may say no.
Yeah, she gave you her Facebook account.
Right. You have her email.
Right. Thanks, Mike.
all right.
All right.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thanks for not traveling across the street to the Brea Improv and seeing us.
Like your
Appreciate that.
dad.
Massive
I
fan.
also wanted to point out that we're streaming live on the iPhone.
Wow.
And every Tuesday, we'll be streaming live here on the iPhone.
Oh, man.
That's great.
The Wheeze
This
and
is bizarre.
the Wheeze and the professor Sandy
Wheeze?
Gans set it
Maybe
up.
people want to see you. You should walk into the frame.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
shouldn't even. Maybe people don't know what you look like.
Huge head.
Donnie and Gans set it up so that you can stream it live onto your iPhone.
There
Every
you go.
Tuesday we'll be doing it live. T, do you have one more news story before we call the wrap?
Sure. Okay, this is the last one, so I have to try to make it a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Should I do a Germany or Florida?
Ooh.
I think I
Let's
have
end
one.
with a Germany or Florida. Give us one news story.
Okay, on the eve of of their first wedding anniversary, Josh Duhamel and Fergie renewed their wedding vows over the weekend. Josh says it's something they plan to do over and over again.
Wow.
We want to do it every year, Duhamel tells Entertainment Tonight. We got the idea from Heidi Klum and Seal. They do that. I thought it was
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah. Do they change the prenup every year, or does that stay the same too?
Is there any idea that Heidi Klum has that you would think would be a good idea? You know, I don't think it's ever come out of my mouth. You know what Heidi Klum says? Heidi Klum.
Speaking of Germans, that
Yeah.
did make you
Yeah.
a little uncomfortable with their accent.
Yeah.
Like when she tells them they're out, I get a little nervous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're out. Now put on this star.
Schnell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, see, I always think the renewing of the wedding vows is right up there with like sort of the Angelina Jolie like vial of blood
Right.
and all that kind of shit. Like, you know, when people ask me about my wife, I'm like, she's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I don't overdo it. I don't give that she's my best friend and we're never gonna, because that always feels like a little overcompensation to me.
Well, I really overcompensated because I didn't say best friend. I was saying soulmate to everybody.
Oh, no.
Soulmate.
Wow.
Actually almost became a cellmate. And,
Yeah, soulmate is what happens right before that couple breaks up, or tattoo.
Oh.
Whenever it goes too far.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
the
Look,
paper doesn't keep you together. I
You're-
mean, you can take all the vows you want.
Everybody's, you know, look, if your parents, Bryan,
Yeah.
your parents have been married for how long?
1 year, 32 years.
32 years.
And they just got,
Mine's 61.
they just renewed their wedding vows.
At 30?
A year ago in Italy. So I think
Good. All right.
a few years down the road.
All right. Here's my thing. Every 30 years, you got to get the fuck out of the country
Right,
because I don't
sure.
want to hear about it. And your parents have tattoos with each other's names
All
on their
over the
side.
body. No,
Vials
That's the
of
point. I
blood.
know your parents only have a serial number on the phone.
Oh,
The point, no, but the point is this.
What's the point?
And they play them every week and it never hits.
I'm saying,
Oh, man.
I'm saying
My
this.
mom's sleeve.
How do all these people stay together without the tattoos and the vials
Alcohol.
of blood and all the fucking
Lots of
renewing of
booze.
the vows every year? And it's I don't know. I just think it's
A
bullshit.
few weeks ago, my soon-to-be ex, because she's not, I guess she's an ex, but not legally yet. She calls me up. She goes with her boyfriend to Las Vegas, and says, "Can I ask you a favor? They don't really know me up here. Really? Half the people there don't even know who fucking Bonnie and Clyde are anymore. Why would they know you?
Right.
We want to go to New York, at the Luxor or the Vault, the Bellagio, one of these places where you have to get a VIP thing.
Yeah.
Could you call somebody you know and get us in there?" And I'm like,
Brazen.
"You've got to be shitting me." And I don't answer the text. Sunday morning, she calls me up. "If you wanted to take me somewhere special for a Sunday brunch in Vegas, where would you take me?" I said, "Out to the middle of the desert with a sawed-off shotgun and a shovel."
Yeah. See that
And
movie
you know what she
Casino?
said?
Yeah.
Right.
She said, "That's why we can't be friends. Because I won't tell you where to go for a bagel, not fucking the guy next door." That was that.
But also,
the friendship was
isn't this
okay.
like calling you up
Ballsy.
and going, "Have you seen my water-soluble lube?"
Right. If you were going to have sex with me from behind, what kind of lube would you...
Eddie came over and asked if she could borrow antibiotics once, and I said, "What?" And she said, "You have any extra?" I said, "You know, that's the one drug. I mean, Vicodin you could get hooked to, but you could say, you know what, I haven't shit in a month. I got to stop." Antibiotics, you have to finish. There is no extra antibiotics around.
Right.
I think I have a urinary tract infection. So I said, "How would you
no.
get that?" She said, "Maybe I wiped in the wrong direction." I said, "Really? At 35, you don't know? You went from back to front?"
Right.
If I came home and told you that
Yeah.
I wiped in the wrong direction and had a urinary tract infection,
That's called.
would you buy it?
That's called honeymoon cystitis.
Cystitis,
That
yeah.
comes from a very
You get that in new relationships from having
Yeah.
so much sex.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Thanks. That's
Yeah.
what I needed to hear at the end. From so much sex with the guy where he reached places you never went to.
Let's go out on a
Yeah, I
high
don't-
depressing note. I should tell everyone that we're going to be streaming every Tuesday. We'll be doing
much.
it live at adamcarolla.com. Also, you can go to Ustream. Hopefully, you don't get an infection.